She was 8 months pregnant when her billionaire husband forced her out of their penthouse suite, right there in front of the hotel staff, in front of the other guests, in front of everyone. His mistress was already stretched out on the sofa, wearing her robe, the one he had bought her in Paris. But here is the thing. What her husband did not know, what nobody in that lobby knew, was that the pregnant woman standing there, humiliated and heartbroken, with her entire life packed into 3 suitcases. She owned the hotel, every brick, every chandelier, every inch of marble beneath his expensive shoes, and she was about to find that out. This is the story of Caroline Mitchell, a woman who lost everything in one night and gained more than she ever imagined. Stay until the end, because the moment the staff reveals the truth, you will not believe what happens next. Now, let us begin. Get out. 2 words, just 2 simple words, but they shattered everything Caroline Ashford had spent 3 years building. She stood frozen in the doorway of the penthouse suite. Her penthouse suite, the one Preston had surprised her with on their wedding night. The one where they had been together for the first time as husband and wife. The one where they had planned to bring their baby home in just 6 weeks. The crystal chandelier above her cast prismatic rainbows across the marble floor. Evening sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, coating everything in shades of gold and amber. It was beautiful. It had always been beautiful. Now it felt like a crime scene. Her hand moved without thinking to her swollen belly. 8 months pregnant, 32 weeks of morning sickness and swollen ankles and midnight cravings for pickles dipped in peanut butter. 32 weeks of growing a life inside her while her marriage apparently crumbled around her, completely without her knowledge. Preston, her voice came out smaller than she intended, weaker, like a child asking for permission. I don't understand. I live here. We live here. Not anymore. He stood in the center of the living room, their living room. His Armani suit was flawless. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly styled. His jaw was set in that hard line she had learned to dread over the past year. He did not look at her belly. Carrie realized with a sickening jolt that he hadn't really looked at it in months. Not the way expecting fathers were supposed to look at the place where their child was growing. Not with wonder or anticipation or love. He looked at it like it was an inconvenience, an obstacle, a problem to be managed. Behind him, draped across the white leather sofa like she had always belonged there, was Tiffany Lawson. 28 years old, blonde, long-legged, the kind of beautiful that belonged on magazine covers and red carpets. She wore a silk robe that Carrie recognized immediately. It was her robe, the one Preston had bought her in Paris on their first anniversary. The one she had worn on lazy Sunday mornings while he made her pancakes and told her she was the most beautiful woman in the world. Tiffany did not bother to close it properly. The silk gaped across her chest, revealing far more than it should have. A deliberate provocation, a territorial display. Look at me, that open robe said. Look at what I have that you don't. Tiffany is moving in, Preston continued. His voice was flat, businesslike, as if he were discussing a property acquisition rather than destroying his pregnant wife's life. I've had your things packed. As if on cue, 2 bellhops appeared behind Carrie in the doorway. Young men in crisp uniforms, their eyes carefully averted. They wheeled 3 rolling suitcases between them. 3 suitcases. Her entire existence reduced to 3 pieces of luggage. 3 years of marriage, thousands of photographs, hundreds of shared meals, dozens of whispered promises in the dark. 3 suitcases. This is a joke. Carrie heard herself laugh. It sounded wrong, hollow, like something breaking deep inside her chest. You are joking. This has to be some kind of sick joke. Tiffany shifted on the sofa. She crossed her legs slowly, deliberately, letting the robe fall open even further. Her smile was small and satisfied. It's not a joke, Caroline. Tiffany's voice was smooth and polished, the same tone she probably used in board meetings at Preston's company, where she worked as head of public relations. Preston and I have been together for quite some time now. It's better for everyone if we just rip off the bandage. Better for everyone. The words echoed inside Carrie's skull like a cruel joke. Better for who? Not for her. Not for the baby currently kicking against her ribs. Not for the life she had believed she was building. Better for Preston and his mistress, that was who. Carrie's vision blurred. Tears or shock, she could not tell the difference anymore. How long? The questions scraped past her throat like broken glass. Preston sighed. Actually sighed, as if she were being tedious, as if her questions were an inconvenience keeping him from more important things. Does it matter? How long? A pause. Then, with the casual cruelty of someone who no longer cares about the damage they cause. 2 years. 2 years. Their entire marriage. Before the wedding, before the proposal, before any of it. Every romantic dinner, every whispered "I love you," every time he had held her and made her feel safe and cherished and wanted, all of it had been a lie. For 2 years he had been coming home to her bed while keeping Tiffany in his heart. For 2 years he had been planning a future with another woman while letting Carrie believe she was his everything. The baby kicked, hard, right under her ribs, as if protesting this moment, as if demanding that its mother do something, say something, fight back. But Carrie could not move, could not speak, could not do anything except stand there, while her world collapsed into rubble at her feet. She thought about the coffee shop where they had met, that little place on Madison Avenue with the exposed brick walls and the smell of freshly ground beans. She had been running late for work. He had been standing in line behind her. When she knocked over her latte, he caught it before it hit the floor. Quick reflexes, she had said, embarrassed. Only for beautiful women, he had replied. She should have known then. Should have recognized the smoothness of that line, the practiced charm of a predator who had done this before. But she had been 29 years old, single, tired of bad dates and broken promises. When a handsome billionaire with kind eyes and an easy smile told her she was special, she had wanted to believe him. She had wanted so badly to believe. "The elevator is waiting," Preston said. His voice cut through her memories like a knife through paper. "Don't make a scene, Caroline. It's beneath you. Don't make a scene. 3 years of marriage, a baby on the way." And his only concern was that she might embarrass him in front of the hotel staff. Don't make a scene, as if her pain were an inconvenience, as if her heartbreak were a breach of etiquette. One of the bellhops cleared his throat softly. He was young, maybe 22 or 23. He had acne scars on his cheeks and kind eyes that could not quite meet hers. "Mrs. Whitmore." His voice was barely above a whisper. "If you'll follow me." Carrie turned. The movement felt automatic, like her body had given up, waiting for her brain to catch up, and decided to function on its own. She walked to the elevator, one foot in front of the other. The carpet was thick and soft beneath her feet. Persian, hand-woven. She remembered when Preston had picked it out. He had said it reminded him of his grandmother's house. Was that a lie too? Did he even have a grandmother? Did anything he had ever told her have any connection to reality at all? The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. The penthouse was on the 42nd floor. The ride down would take forever. She stepped inside. The bellhops followed with her suitcases, positioning them carefully against the back wall. They stood at respectful distances, their eyes still carefully averted. They knew. Of course they knew. In a building like this, everyone knew everything. The staff had probably been watching her marriage fall apart for months, years. They had probably seen Tiffany coming and going while Carrie was at her doctor's appointments or visiting her mother. They had known, and no one had said anything. The doors closed. Carrie watched the numbers descend on the polished brass panel above the doors. 41, 40, 39. Her reflection stared back at her from the mirrored walls. A woman she barely recognized. Mascara already streaking down her cheeks. Hair she hadn't had time to brush that morning because the baby had been sitting on her bladder and she had spent half the night in the bathroom. The expensive maternity dress that suddenly felt like a costume she had been wearing in someone else's play. 32, 31, 30. She thought about the nursery, the pale yellow walls she had painted herself, because Preston had said hiring painters was a waste of money. The mobile of silver stars that played Brahms' lullaby when you wound it up. The rocking chair by the window where she had imagined nursing their child at 3 a.m. while the city slept below. Had he been planning this even then? While she painted those walls, while she assembled that crib, while she folded tiny onesies and dreamed about the family they would become? 24, 23, 22. She thought about her parents. Her father, Thomas Mitchell, who had died when she was 22. A heart attack on a Tuesday afternoon. There one moment, gone the next. Her mother, Dorothy, who had never quite recovered from losing him. What would her father think if he could see her now? Standing in an elevator, crying over a man who had never deserved her? He would be disappointed. Not in her, in the man who had hurt her, in a world that allowed such cruelty to exist. Be careful who you trust, Carrie. That is what he used to say. The world is full of people who see value and want to take it. She had thought he was being paranoid, overprotective. Now she understood he had been trying to prepare her for exactly this moment. 15, 14, 13. The baby kicked again, softer this time. A gentle reminder that she was not alone in this elevator, that there was another life depending on her, counting on her. I'm sorry, sweetheart, the thought formed without permission. I'm so sorry. This is the world you are being born into. She took a breath, tried to steady herself, tried to remember who she had been before Preston Whitmore walked into her life and convinced her she was nothing without him. She had been someone, once, before the marriage and the isolation and the slow erosion of everything that made her herself. She had had friends, opinions, a career she cared about. What had happened to that woman? Preston had happened. Slowly, methodically, like water wearing away stone. Lobby. The elevator doors opened to the marble grandeur of the Belmore Grand. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings 2 stories above. Fresh flowers in massive arrangements perfumed the air with roses and lilies. Guests in evening wear milled about, heading to dinner or the theater or wherever wealthy people went on a Tuesday night. They all turned to look. Carrie stepped out of the elevator. The bellhops followed with her suitcases, the wheels clicking softly against the marble floor. She could feel the weight of every gaze in that lobby. The pregnant woman with the tear-streaked face and the suitcases, the obvious spectacle. Someone in a red dress whispered to her companion. A man in a tuxedo shook his head with something that might have been pity or might have been judgment. A teenager had her phone out, recording. Of course someone was recording. Everything was content now. Every breakdown, every humiliation, every worst moment of someone's life preserved forever in pixels and uploaded for strangers to consume. She wondered how long it would take for the video to go viral. An hour? 2? By morning, would the whole world know that Preston Whitmore had thrown out his pregnant wife for a younger woman? Her phone buzzed in her purse. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. A text from Preston. Don't make a scene. I'll have my lawyer contact yours about arrangements. Be reasonable. Be reasonable, the phrase echoed in her skull like a cruel joke. Be reasonable while your heart is breaking, while your life is collapsing. While you stand in a hotel lobby with everything you own in 3 suitcases and a baby in your belly who will never know a father who truly loves her, be reasonable. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw the phone across the marble floor and watch it shatter into 1,000 pieces. Wanted to march back up to that penthouse and make a scene so spectacular that Preston Whitmore would never forget it. But she didn't. She couldn't. Because she was 8 months pregnant and alone and terrified, and she didn't know what else to do except stand there and try not to fall apart. Mrs. Whitmore, a voice at her elbow, calm, professional, familiar. Carrie turned to find Harold Bennett standing beside her, the Belmore's general manager. 58 years old, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, carrying the kind of dignified bearing that came from decades of handling wealthy people at their absolute worst. He had worked at this hotel for as long as she had been alive, longer probably. He had been here when she moved in 3 years ago. He had welcomed her to the penthouse with a bottle of champagne and a genuine smile. Now his face was professionally neutral, but something flickered behind his eyes, something that looked almost like genuine concern. Perhaps you'd like to wait in my office while we arrange transportation, he said quietly. Away from, he glanced meaningfully at the teenager with the recording phone. Away from the audience. I don't. She couldn't finish the sentence. Where would she even go? Her mother lived in Connecticut, 3 hours by train. Her best friend Nora lived across town, but Carrie hadn't spoken to her in 8 months. Preston thought Nora was negative energy. That's what he had called her after that dinner party where Nora had too much wine and said something about how controlling Preston seemed. She's jealous of what we have, Preston had explained afterward. Some people can't stand seeing others happy. Carrie had believed him, had slowly let the friendship wither, had stopped returning Nora's calls and texts until eventually they stopped coming altogether. Preston thought a lot of things, and Carrie had believed them all. Harold guided her gently but firmly toward a side corridor, away from the whispers, away from the phones, away from the lobby where her humiliation was becoming someone's viral moment. His office was small but elegant, wood-paneled walls with old photographs in silver frames, a leather chair that creaked softly when she sank into it, the lingering scent of old books and furniture polish. "Can I get you anything?" Harold asked. "Water? Tea? Something stronger?" "I don't know what to do." The words came out before she could stop them. Raw, unfiltered, the kind of honesty she hadn't allowed herself in years. "I don't know where to go. I don't know how this happened. I don't know anything." Harold closed the door. When he turned back to face her, something had shifted in his expression. The professional neutrality had cracked, just slightly, revealing something more human underneath. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, "there is something you should know about this hotel." Carrie looked up at him. Her tears had stopped, replaced by a numbness that felt almost worse, like her emotions had simply given up and gone offline. "What do you mean?" Harold hesitated. He glanced at the door, then at the photographs on his wall, then back at her face. "Forgive me," he said slowly. "This isn't my place. I have debated saying anything for years. Every time you passed through the lobby, every time I saw you in the restaurant or the spa, I wondered if I should speak up. But it wasn't my business. It wasn't my story to tell." He took a breath, seemed to make a decision. "But after what I just witnessed," he shook his head. "I've worked at the Bellmore for 31 years, Mrs. Whitmore. I was here when your father used to visit." Carrie's breath caught in her throat. "My father?" Thomas Mitchell had died when she was 22. A heart attack. Sudden. Devastating. One moment he was eating lunch at his desk, the next he was gone. He had been a quiet man, an accountant, she had always thought. He worked at a firm in Hartford, took the train to work every morning, brought his lunch in a brown paper bag because he said restaurant food was a waste of money. Nothing like the Whitmore world of private jets and penthouse suites and champagne that cost more than her first car. "I'm certain there's been some confusion," she said. "My father wasn't the type to visit places like the Bellmore." Harold walked slowly to the wall of photographs. His fingers traced the frames until he found the one he was looking for. He lifted it from its hook and brought it to her. Two men shaking hands in front of the Bellmore's grand entrance. One was a younger Harold, his hair still dark, his face unlined by decades of managing crises and difficult guests. He was smiling broadly, proudly. The other man was her father, Thomas Mitchell, in a suit she didn't recognize, standing straighter than she had ever seen him stand, with an expression of quiet pride that she had never witnessed in all her 22 years of knowing him. "Opening day," Harold said softly, 1993. "Your father stayed anonymous by design. He didn't care for attention. He didn't want the spotlight or the recognition. But he built this hotel, Mrs. Whitmore. Every brick, every beam, every crystal in those chandeliers." The room tilted. Carrie gripped the armrest of the leather chair. "And when he passed," Harold continued, "that ownership transferred to his only heir." The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy, impossible to grasp. Carrie stared at Harold, waiting for him to take them back. To laugh. To admit it was a misunderstanding. To restore the world to its proper shape. He didn't. "My father was an accountant," she said. The words came out slowly, carefully, as if speaking too fast might shatter whatever fragile reality she was clinging to. "He worked at a firm in Hartford for 30 years. He took the train every morning at 6:45. He brought his lunch in a brown paper bag. He wore the same 3 suits in rotation because he said fashion was a waste of money." She looked at the photograph again, her father's face, that unfamiliar expression of pride. He wasn't. He couldn't have. "He was a brilliant man who didn't care for attention," Harold said gently. "The accounting firm was real. He worked there until he was 40. But he invested every spare dollar he had, quietly, carefully. Properties no one else wanted, buildings other investors had given up on." Harold set the photograph on his desk, facing her. "The Bellmore was his first major property. He bought it in 1989 with your grandmother's life insurance money. The building was a wreck then, condemned nearly. Everyone said he was crazy to try to save it. A wreck? Decades of neglect. The previous owners had let it fall apart, the roof leaked, the plumbing was a disaster. Half the electrical system was held together with prayers and duct tape." Harold's voice softened with memory. "But your father saw something in it. Potential, he called it. He said buildings were like people. Sometimes they just needed someone to believe in them. Carrie thought about her father's bedtime stories, tales of builders and dreamers, people who saw potential where others saw problems. She had always assumed they were fairy tales, made up to help her sleep. What if they had been true? What if her father had been the builder in all those stories, and she had just never known? "I don't understand," she whispered. "If my father owned this hotel, why didn't I know? Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Your father wanted you to have a normal childhood, a normal life. He didn't want you to grow up as the heiress, to be treated differently, to be a target." A target, the word sent a chill down her spine. "He set up a trust," Harold continued. "Everything was to be held until your 30th birthday, managed quietly by his attorney. No public announcements, no fanfare. When you turned 30, you would learn the truth. You would decide what to do with what he had built." Carrie's 30th birthday had been 2 years ago, a small dinner with Preston at a restaurant downtown. He had given her diamond earrings that cost more than her car. Nothing had happened on that birthday. No attorney had appeared, no truth had been revealed. "The trust," she said slowly. "You mentioned an attorney. Richard Dalton. He worked with your father for decades. He was supposed to contact you on your birthday, explain everything, answer your questions, help you understand what you had inherited. But he didn't." Harold's expression darkened. "No, he didn't. I was surprised when I saw you living here, but seemingly unaware of your ownership. I assume perhaps you preferred to keep it private. Some owners do. They don't want the attention, don't want people treating them differently." He paused. "But I always wondered why you never came to the management meetings. Why you never reviewed the financial reports. Why you seemed to have no idea that the Belmore belonged to you." The numbness was wearing off. Something sharper was taking its place. Something that felt like the beginning of understanding. "Richard Dalton," she repeated. "You said he was supposed to contact me. He was supposed to explain everything." "Yes." "But he didn't." "No." "So either he failed to do his job, or someone prevented him from doing it." Harold was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was careful, measured. "I don't want to make accusations, Mrs. Whitmore, but your husband has been managing this hotel's affairs for the past 3 years. He has been signing documents, making decisions, representing himself as acting on your behalf." The room went cold. "I never gave him that authority." "No, I suspected as much when I saw the way he spoke to you, the way he made decisions without consulting you, the way he—" Harold stopped himself. "The way he what?" "Forgive me, it's not my place." "Tell me." Harold sighed. Suddenly he looked older than his 58 years, tired, burdened by knowledge he had carried for too long. "The way he treated you, Mrs. Whitmore. Like you were an employee, not a partner, not a wife, not the owner of this building and everything in it." The words hit her like a physical blow, because they were true, every single one of them. She had felt it for years, the subtle condescension, the way Preston explained things to her as if she were a child, the way he made decisions and presented them as facts, the way he slowly, systematically made her feel like she was lucky to have him, like she was nothing without him. She had thought it was normal. She had thought that was just how marriages worked. She had thought she was being too sensitive, too demanding, too difficult. Preston had told her all those things over and over until she believed them. Her phone rang. The sound cut through the heavy silence like a knife. Nora's name flashed on the screen. Her best friend since freshman year of college. The one who had stood beside her at the wedding, smiling through obvious reservations. The one Carrie hadn't spoken to in 8 months because Preston had convinced her that Nora was toxic. She answered. "I saw it on Instagram," Nora said without any preamble. Her voice was sharp, urgent, furious. "Someone posted a video. You in the lobby looking like the world just ended. What the hell happened? What did that bastard do to you?" "He threw me out," Carrie's voice cracked. "For Tiffany, his mistress. She was wearing my robe, Nora. The one from Paris. She was sitting on my sofa in my robe like she owned the place. That absolute son of a. It's been 2 years, the affair. Our entire marriage has been a lie. I'm coming. Don't move. Stay exactly where you are. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Nora, Carrie glanced at Harold, who had discreetly turned away to give her privacy. "There's something else, something I just found out. About my father. About this hotel. I don't even know how to explain it. Then don't. Not on the phone. Just stay where you are. I'm on my way. The line went dead. Carrie lowered the phone. Her hand was shaking. Everything was shaking. Mrs. Whitmore, Harold said quietly, would you like me to contact Mr. Dalton? Given the circumstances, I believe he would want to know what has happened. Yes, the word came out automatically. Yes, please. Harold nodded and left the office, closing the door softly behind him. Alone, Carrie looked around the small room. The photographs on the walls, the neat stacks of papers on the desk, the lingering scent of furniture polish and old books. Her father had built this hotel. Her father, who had never seemed to have two nickels to rub together. Her father, who had driven the same car for 15 years and worn the same suits until they were threadbare. Her father, who had died of a heart attack on a Tuesday afternoon, leaving behind a closet full of worn shoes and a daughter who thought she knew him. She thought about all the times he had taken her to the city as a child. The way he would pause in front of certain buildings, studying them with an intensity she hadn't understood. What do you see, Daddy? She had asked once. They were standing in front of an old brownstone that looked like it was about to fall down. Potential, sweetheart. I see potential. She had thought he was being silly, philosophical, the way adults sometimes were when they didn't want to give real answers. Now she understood. He had been looking at buildings the way a sculptor looks at stone, seeing not what they were, but what they could become. She thought about the bedtime stories he used to tell, tales of a man who could see potential where others saw problems, who built beautiful things out of ruins, who changed the world without anyone ever knowing his name. She had loved those stories, had begged for them every night, had dreamed of meeting the mysterious builder who lived in her father's imagination. She had never realized she was living with him. She thought about the last thing he had said to her, 3 days before his heart attack. A phone call about nothing in particular. Weather, work, plans for a weekend that would never happen. Be careful who you trust, Carrie. The world is full of people who see value and want to take it. At the time, she had thought he was talking about her job, her tendency to overshare with coworkers. She had laughed it off. Maybe he had been trying to warn her. Maybe he had known somehow that predators would come for her once he was gone. That men like Preston Whitmore would see her not as a person, but as an opportunity. The door opened. Harold returned with a silver tray, chamomile tea in a delicate porcelain cup, a small plate of butter cookies, a single white orchid in a crystal vase. For the stress, he said. The kitchen remembers your preferences. You ordered chamomile every afternoon when you first moved in. The kindness nearly broke her. The kitchen remembered. The staff she had barely spoken to in 3 years remembered what kind of tea she liked. Her own husband had forgotten she existed, but the kitchen of the Belmore remembered. Mr. Dalton is on his way, Harold continued. He was quite distressed to hear from me. He's been trying to contact you for 2 years, apparently, ever since your 30th birthday. 2 years? He said your husband informed him that you wished all communications to go through his office, that you found legal matters overwhelming, that you preferred not to be bothered with the details of your inheritance. The pieces were clicking into place, slowly, horribly, like a puzzle revealing a picture she didn't want to see. I never said any of that. No, Harold's voice was carefully neutral. I suspected as much. Nora arrived before the attorney. She burst through the door of Harold's office like a hurricane in designer boots, 5'10", red hair that hadn't faded since college. The kind of presence that made rooms feel smaller and problems feel solvable. She took one look at Carrie's face and crossed the room in 3 strides. Tell me everything, she said, from the beginning. Don't leave anything out. So Carrie told her. The eviction, Preston's cold announcement, Tiffany in the robe on the sofa, the bellhops with the suitcases, the elevator ride down, the recording phones in the lobby, and then the rest. The photograph of her father, Harold's revelation, the inheritance she had never known existed, the trust that should have come to her 2 years ago. Nora listened without interrupting. Her expression cycled through shock, fury, and finally something that looked like grim satisfaction. I knew Preston was trash, she said when Carrie finished. I knew it from the first time I met him. Something about the way he looked at you, like you were a thing to be acquired, not a person to be loved. Why didn't you tell me? I tried, honey. Don't you remember? At your engagement party, I pulled you aside. I said something didn't feel right about him. Carrie remembered. Her mother had tried to pull her aside too, starting to say something, and Nora with her glass of wine trying to find the words. Preston had appeared both times. With champagne, with charm, with that smile that made her forget everything except how much she loved him. He was always watching, Nora continued, always there at exactly the wrong moment. I thought I was being paranoid, but now I know I wasn't. Now I know he was playing all of us, your mother, me, everyone who might have warned you. Nora's jaw tightened. But here's the thing, Carrie. I didn't know he was criminal trash. This isn't just cheating, this is fraud. He's been intercepting communications from your attorney for 2 years. He's been living in a hotel that belongs to you. He's been making decisions about properties you own. That's not infidelity, that's theft. The word hung in the air. Theft. Preston Whitmore, with his private jets and his Armani suits and his condescending explanations about business, was a thief. He had stolen her inheritance, her autonomy, her connection to everyone who might have helped her, and now she was going to find out exactly how much he had taken. Richard Dalton arrived 20 minutes later. He looked exactly like a trust attorney should look. Silver-haired, steady hands, reading glasses perched on his nose. The kind of gravitas that came from decades of managing other people's fortunes. He carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Carrie's first apartment's monthly rent. His suit was expensive but understated, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. But his eyes were what caught Carrie's attention. They were red-rimmed, as if he had been crying or as if he hadn't slept in a very long time. Mrs. Whitmore. He set the briefcase on Harold's desk and took her hands in both of his. His grip was warm, firm, trembling slightly. I have been trying to reach you for 2 years, since the day after your 30th birthday. Letters, phone calls, emails. All of them went unanswered. I never received any of them. No, I know that now, his voice cracked. Your husband contacted my office 3 days after your wedding. He said you found legal matters overwhelming. He said you preferred to have him handle everything on your behalf. He provided a power of attorney document with your signature. I never signed anything like that. No, I suspected as much, but I had no way to reach you. Every number I called went to his office. Every letter I sent came back marked return to sender. He released her hands and reached for his briefcase. I should have tried harder. I should have come here in person. I should have found a way. It's not your fault. Yes, it is. His voice hardened with self-recrimination. I was your father's attorney for 32 years. He trusted me to protect you, to make sure you understood what he had built, to help you navigate the complexities of your inheritance. He opened the briefcase. Instead, I let a predator intercept everything. I let him steal from you while I sat in my office following proper procedures. What exactly did my father leave me? Richard pulled out a thick folder, laid it open on the desk. Everything, Caroline, not just this hotel. The Belmore is the flagship, yes, but there are 6 other properties. Commercial buildings in Boston, apartment complexes in Philadelphia, a resort in Vermont, warehouses in New Jersey that have tripled in value since your father acquired them. He slid a paper across the desk. Total estimated value as of your 30th birthday. Carrie looked at the number, looked again. $847 million. That's not possible, she heard herself say. Your father spent 40 years building this portfolio, quietly, anonymously. He never wanted the spotlight, never wanted his name in the papers or his face on magazine covers. He just wanted to build things, beautiful things, things that would last. Richard reached back into the briefcase. He also left you this, to be delivered on your 30th birthday along with all the documents and explanations you needed. An envelope, cream-colored, heavy stock, her father's handwriting on the front. For my Carrie. Carrie took it with trembling fingers. The paper felt familiar somehow, like a piece of her childhood she had forgotten existed. What happened to all of this? She asked. If this was supposed to come to me 2 years ago, where did it go? Richard and Harold exchanged a glance. Mr. Whitmore happened, Richard said. He contacted my office and presented himself as your representative. He provided forged documents. He intercepted every communication I sent. And then, he pulled more papers from the briefcase. He began managing your properties himself, without your knowledge, without your consent. Carrie looked at the documents, financial statements, property assessments, transfer agreements, her signature at the bottom of each one. Except it wasn't her signature, not really, It was close, close enough to fool someone who wasn't looking carefully. But the loops were wrong. The pressure was different. The way the Y in Ashford curved was not the way she had ever written it. "These are forgeries," she said. "Yes, all of them. And through these forgeries, your husband has been systematically draining your inheritance for 3 years." The room went silent. Carrie stared at the papers, at the fake signatures, at the scope of the deception that had been happening all around her while she painted nurseries and folded baby clothes. "How much?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Richard hesitated. "How much has he taken?" "Including leveraged debt against your properties, deferred income, and direct transfers to accounts in his name." He named a figure. $420 million. Half of everything her father had spent 40 years building, gone. The number was so large it felt abstract, meaningless, like a statistic from a news story about someone else's life. $420 million. Carrie's brain couldn't process it, couldn't turn it into something real. It was too big, too impossible, too far removed from anything she had ever known. She thought about her father, his brown paper lunch bags, his 15-year-old car, his refusal to replace his suits until they were literally falling apart. He had lived like a man with nothing while secretly building an empire worth nearly $1 billion. Why? She looked at the envelope in her hands. His handwriting. The familiar loops and curves from 1,000 birthday cards and permission slips and notes tucked into her lunchbox. "Be brave today," the notes used to say. "You're stronger than you know." "I need a moment," she said quietly. "Alone with this." Nora looked like she wanted to argue, but Richard touched her arm gently. "Of course," he said. "Take all the time you need. We'll be just outside." They filed out. Harold, Nora, Richard. The door clicked softly behind them. Carrie sat in the leather chair, the one that probably cost more than her old apartment's rent, the one in a hotel she apparently owned. She turned the envelope over in her hands, felt the weight of it, the texture of the expensive paper. Her father had written this letter 3 years before his death. He had planned for this moment. Imagined her sitting somewhere, reading his words, learning the truth about who he really was. He could never have imagined she would be reading it in a hotel office, pregnant, betrayed, with mascara staining her cheeks and her whole life in ruins. She opened the envelope. The letter inside was written on heavy cream paper, 2 pages, front and back, dated 3 years before his death. "My dearest Carrie," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've turned 30. I hope your birthday was wonderful. I hope you're surrounded by people who love you. I hope the world has been kind to you. I hope you're happy. I kept secrets from you, and for that I'm sorry. Your mother knew. She was my partner in everything, even this. But we agreed. We wanted you to grow up normal. To make your own choices without the weight of money shaping them. To find out who you were before you learned what you had. The Belmore was my first building. I bought it with your grandmother's life insurance when I was 26 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that I saw something in that old hotel that no one else could see. Potential. It needed everything. New roof, new plumbing, new electrical, new everything. Everyone said I was crazy. Everyone said I would lose everything, even your grandmother's money, which was supposed to be for my education. But I saw what it could become. I saw the ballrooms full of light, the lobbies full of laughter, the families making memories that would last forever. I saw beauty where others saw rubble. It worked, not because I was smart or talented or lucky. It worked because I believed in it, because I was willing to do the work, because I refused to give up, even when everyone told me I should. And then it grew. 1 building became 2, 2 became 5, 5 became more. I discovered I had a gift for seeing value where others saw decay, for finding the potential in things that had been given up on. I'm giving you that gift now, Carrie, all of it, every building, every brick, every piece of potential I spent 40 years nurturing. Use it wisely. Trust slowly. And remember, the bricks and mortar mean nothing. What matters is what you build inside them. Carrie had to stop reading. The tears were blurring the words. Her father, her quiet, unassuming father, who had never seemed to want anything except a peaceful life. He had been a builder, a dreamer, a man who saw potential where others saw problems. And he had hidden it all from her to protect her, to let her become who she was supposed to be without the weight of his legacy crushing her. She wiped her eyes and continued reading. You're probably angry with me right now for keeping secrets, for not trusting you with the truth. I understand that anger. I felt it too when my own father died and left me nothing but debts and regrets. But I hope you'll understand someday. I hope you'll see that I was trying to give you something more valuable than money. I was trying to give you freedom. The freedom to fail, to make mistakes, to find your own path, without everyone around you trying to steer you toward what they thought you should do. I was trying to give you the chance to become yourself before you became an heiress. Did it work? Are you happy? Did you find what you were looking for? I won't be there to ask you these questions. That's the hardest part of writing this letter, knowing that by the time you read it, I'll be gone. I'll never know what kind of woman you grew up to be. But I already know, Carrie. I've always known you're going to be magnificent. She set the letter down, pressed her hands against her belly. The baby was moving, shifting position, getting ready for the journey that was still weeks away. You're going to be magnificent. Her father had believed that. Had written those words 3 years before he died, when she was still finding her way, when she didn't know what she wanted to do with her life, when she was just a 20-something trying to figure out who she was. He had believed in her potential, just like he believed in the potential of old buildings that no one else could see. She picked up the letter again. One more thing, Carrie, and this is important. Trust slowly. I've spent my whole life watching people. The ones who build things, the ones who tear them down. The ones who see potential and nurture it, the ones who see value and try to steal it. The world is full of both kinds, and sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. Trust slowly. Give people time to show you who they really are. Don't let charm fool you. Don't let promises blind you. Watch what people do, not what they say. And if someone ever makes you feel small, if someone ever makes you feel like you're less than you are, if someone ever tries to control you or isolate you or convince you that you can't survive without them, run. Run as fast as you can, because you are not small, you are not less. You are my daughter, and my daughter can survive anything. I love you, sweetheart. I always will. I'm sorry I won't be there to see who you become, but I already know you'll be magnificent. All my love, forever, Dad. Carrie set the letter down on Harold's desk. Her hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. Run. Her father had written those words years before she ever met Preston, years before she walked into that coffee shop and knocked over her latte and let a charming predator sweep her off her feet. Had he known? Had he somehow sensed that men like Preston would come for her? That they would see her potential and try to steal it? Maybe that was why he had built his empire in secret, why he had lived like a pauper while accumulating nearly $1 billion. He knew what wealth attracted. He knew the predators that circled around it. He had tried to protect her from them, and she had walked right into their trap anyway. The door opened slowly. Nora peeked in, her expression hesitant. Hey, you okay? Carrie wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. No, but I will be. That's my girl. Nora stepped into the office. Richard has a plan. Several plans, actually. Lawyers love plans. But first, we need to get you somewhere safe. Somewhere Preston can't find you. Where? My place. The guest room is already made up. I've been hoping you'd come stay for months. She paused. Ever since he stopped letting you see me? Stopped letting you see me. The phrase landed like a slap, because that was exactly what had happened. Preston hadn't forbidden her from seeing Nora. He had just made it impossible. Scheduling conflicts. Important events. Subtle comments about Nora's negative energy and how some people couldn't handle seeing others happy. She had let him isolate her from everyone who might have told her the truth. Okay, Carrie said, let's go. Nora's apartment was on the Upper West Side. A brownstone walk-up with creaky stairs and radiators that clanged in winter and a view of a courtyard where pigeons gathered every morning. Nothing like the sleek penthouse Carrie had called home for 3 years. It felt more like home than the penthouse ever had. The guest room was small but cozy. A queen bed with a blue quilt that Nora's grandmother had made. A window that looked out onto the courtyard. A reading lamp that cast warm shadows on the walls. Real shadows, soft ones, not the hard-edged shadows of crystal chandeliers and marble floors. Carrie sat on the edge of the bed. Her father's letter was still in her hands. She had read it 6 times now. Each reading revealed something new, some word or phrase she had missed before. 2 in the morning. The city had gone quiet outside the window. Even New York slept eventually. She should sleep too. The doctor had told her at every appointment that stress wasn't good for the baby. Rest was essential. Self-care was essential. All the things she had nodded along to while secretly staying up late worrying about whether Preston was happy with her. As if his happiness were more important than her health, than the baby's health. How had she let that happen? How had she become someone who valued a man's approval more than her own well-being? But her mind wouldn't stop cycling through the math. Preston had known, he must have known. Before the coffee shop, before the spilled latte, before any of it. The meeting that had felt like fate was probably carefully orchestrated. The charm, the persistence, the romantic certainty that she was the one. All of it calculated to win her trust. She thought about the first time he said he loved her. 6 weeks after they met, a rooftop restaurant with a view of the Brooklyn Bridge. Stars overhead and champagne in their glasses. His hand reaching across the table to take hers. "I've never felt this way about anyone," he had said. "I know it's fast. I know we haven't known each other long. But I know what I feel. I love you, Caroline. I think I've loved you since the moment you knocked that latte out of my hands." She had cried, actually cried, because no one had ever said those words to her before. Not like that. Not with such conviction and certainty. Now she understood why. He had been performing. Reading from a script he had probably used a dozen times before. Saying the words that would make her trust him. Open up to him. Give him access to everything she had. "I was never the one," she thought. "I was the owner." The baby kicked, a strong one, right under her ribs. "I know," she whispered, pressing her hand against the movement. "I know you're in there. I know you're wondering what's going on." This child would never know its grandfather, would grow up in whatever was left after the legal battles, would ask someday, what was Daddy like? What would she say? How could she explain that the child's father was a fraud, a thief, a man who had married their mother for money and thrown her away when something younger came along? She couldn't. She wouldn't. She would find another way to explain it, a gentler version of the truth. But first, she had to understand what had happened. All of it, every lie, every manipulation, every forged signature and intercepted letter. She opened the letter again. Her eyes found the words she had been circling around all night. Trust slowly. And remember, the bricks and mortar mean nothing. What matters is what you build inside them. What had she built inside her marriage? 3 years of diminishing, 3 years of shrinking herself to fit Preston's preferences. 3 years of apologizing for having opinions and asking permission for purchases, and slowly, slowly forgetting who she used to be. She used to laugh easily, big, loud laughs that filled rooms. Preston had called them unrefined, said they drew too much attention. She had learned to laugh smaller, quieter, less. She used to have strong opinions about movies and restaurants and politics. Preston had called her views naive, said she didn't understand the complexities of the world. She had learned to keep her opinions to herself, to nod and smile and agree with whatever he said. She used to take up space without apologizing, to walk into rooms like she belonged there. Preston had made her feel like she was always in the way, always too loud or too quiet or too much or not enough. She had learned to make herself smaller, to hover at the edges, to wait for permission to exist. Where had that woman gone? The one who laughed and opined and took up space? Preston had erased her, slowly, methodically, like a forger perfecting someone else's signature. The tears came again. But these were different from the ones before. These were angry tears, hot and sharp and clarifying. He had stolen her inheritance, her self-worth, her sense of reality. He would not steal her future. Morning came slowly. Gray light crept through the window. The sounds of the city waking up, garbage trucks reversing with their warning beeps, car horns, someone arguing in Spanish on the street below. Carrie had slept maybe 2 hours, scattered naps between bouts of reading and thinking and staring at the ceiling. Her phone showed 47 missed calls, 22 from Preston, 16 from unknown numbers that were probably press. The video from the lobby had gone viral overnight, just as she had feared. 9 from Judith Whitmore, Preston's mother, 1 voicemail from her own mother. "Carrie, I saw the news. I'm on the next flight. We need to talk about your father." She deleted Preston's messages without listening to them. Whatever he had to say, she didn't want to hear it. Not yet, maybe not ever. The shower in Nora's bathroom was tiny. The water pressure was weak. The towels were scratchy from too many washes. It was the most normal she had felt in 3 years. When she emerged, wrapped in a robe that actually belonged to Nora, she found her friend in the kitchen. "Richard's here," Nora said. "He brought documents and coffee." But mostly documents. The attorney was set up at the dining room table, papers everywhere. His laptop open to multiple spreadsheets. Harold Bennett sat beside him, looking slightly out of place in his formal suit, amid Nora's eclectic decor of mismatched furniture and colorful art prints. "I hope you don't mind that I came," Harold said. "Mr. Dalton felt my institutional knowledge might be helpful." "Of course," Carrie lowered herself into a chair. The baby protested the compression, shifting restlessly. "What do we know?" Richard pushed a stack of papers toward her. "We spent the night going through the records. The picture is worse than we initially thought." "Worse how?" "Preston didn't just leverage your properties for his investments. He's been systematically draining the operating accounts as well. The Belmore alone has lost nearly $40 million in the past 2 years. Deferred maintenance, reduced staff, corners cut everywhere." Carrie thought about the bellhops who had wheeled her suitcases to the lobby. The careful way they had avoided her eyes. The young one with the acne scars and the kind expression. Had they known? Had everyone known except her? "The good news," Richard continued, "is that the properties themselves are still valuable. The real estate market has been strong. Even with the debt Preston incurred, your net worth remains substantial once we void the fraudulent transactions." "And we can void them?" "Without question. The forgeries are blatant once you know what to look for. The assistant who notarized them has already agreed to provide testimony in exchange for immunity. She's apparently quite eager to avoid prison." Nora snorted. "Imagine that, a co-conspirator eager to save her own skin." The doorbell rang. Carrie's mother stood in the hallway. Dorothy Mitchell looked smaller than Carrie remembered. Grayer. The flight from Connecticut had been short, but the stress showed in every line of her face. "Oh, sweetheart." She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around Carrie as best she could around the baby bump. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "You knew," Carrie said. "Not an accusation, just a statement of fact." "Yes." Dorothy pulled back. Her eyes were wet. "Your father wanted to wait. He wanted you to find yourself first. To have a chance to become who you were going to be without the weight of the money shaping your choices. And then Preston came along. And everything moved so fast. The proposal after 6 months. The wedding 3 months later. I thought. I hoped. Maybe he really loved you." Carrie remembered her mother at the engagement party. The way she had started to say something. The way Preston had appeared at exactly the wrong moment, with his charming smile and his champagne. "You tried to tell me." "I should have tried harder," Dorothy's voice cracked. "Your father saw men like him in business. Predators in nice suits who could smell money and vulnerability. He always said trust slowly. I should have trusted my instincts." "It's not your fault, Mom." But even as she said it, Carrie knew the truth. Everyone had seen it but her. 3 days passed. 3 days of documents and phone calls and legal strategy sessions that made Carrie's head spin. She learned things about her father she had never known. The scope of his empire. The careful way he had built it brick by brick over 40 years. The anonymous donations to charities and scholarships. The employees whose college tuitions he had secretly paid. The families whose mortgages he had helped during hard times. Thomas Mitchell had been a good man. A quiet revolutionary who changed lives without ever taking credit. And Preston Whitmore had tried to destroy everything he built. The forensic accountants arrived on day 4. A team of 3 led by a woman named Patricia Henderson, who wore reading glasses on a chain and spoke in numbers like poetry. "The fraud is extensive but traceable," Patricia reported. "Every transaction, every transfer, every forged document, it's all here in the paper trail." She spread charts across Nora's dining table. Columns of figures. Arrows showing money flowing from Carrie's accounts into Preston's shell companies. A web of deception that stretched across 3 years in multiple jurisdictions. "He was smart," Patricia admitted, "but not smart enough. There are patterns, signatures that don't quite match, timestamps that don't align. Once you know what to look for, it's obvious." "How much did he take?" Carrie asked. Patricia hesitated. "Everything included?" Carrie pressed. "Everything. Approximately $420 million over 3 years, through a combination of direct theft, leveraged debt, deferred income, and creative accounting. The number still felt abstract, meaningless, but it was starting to take shape, starting to feel real. Can we get it back? Most of it. The assets are still there. The properties, the accounts he couldn't access without physical documents. Once we void the fraudulent transactions, the debt transfers to him personally. The stolen funds become a civil judgment. What about criminal charges? Richard Dalton stepped in. The district attorney is very interested. I met with her office yesterday. They're reviewing the evidence now. What charges? Forgery, wire fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. The list is extensive. Richard allowed himself a small, grim smile. Mr. Whitmore is going to have a very unpleasant few months. How long could he go to prison? If convicted on all charges, 15 to 20 years. 15 to 20 years? The father of her child might spend the next 2 decades behind bars. Carrie should have felt something at that news. Satisfaction. Justice. Something. Instead, she just felt tired, bone-deep exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. Her phone rang, Preston's name on the screen. Again, she had been ignoring his calls for 3 days. 47 had become 62, then 89, then over 100. This time, something made her answer. Caroline. Preston's voice was smooth, controlled. His business voice, the one he used in board meetings and negotiations. Finally, let's talk about this like adults. Like adults? You're clearly upset, I understand, but you're blowing this out of proportion. Carrie looked at the chart spread across the table. $420 million, blown out of proportion. Tiffany means nothing, Preston continued. It was a moment of weakness. I've been under tremendous stress. The investments haven't been performing. The board has been pressuring me. I needed someone who understood the pressures I was facing. The investments. Carrie's voice was deadly quiet. You mean the investments you made using my properties as collateral? Silence. Richard Dalton called you, didn't he? It wasn't a question. Caroline, whatever that old man told you, he told me you forged my signature. He told me you've been defrauding me since before our wedding. He told me you married me for my father's money. That's not, Preston's voice shifted. The charm dropped like a mask, revealing the face underneath. Listen to me. You don't understand business. You've never understood business. Everything I did was to grow our portfolio. My portfolio, that you stole. I built that portfolio. His voice rose, the first crack in his composure. I turned your father's outdated properties into something worth having. The Belmore was losing money when I took over. The Boston buildings were underperforming. The Vermont resort was hemorrhaging cash. I made them profitable. By stealing from me. By managing assets that you were too ignorant to handle yourself. There it was, the contempt. 3 years of it, finally said aloud. The truth he had hidden behind smiles and charm and performative affection. You think you could have done what I did? Preston continued. You, who couldn't even balance a checkbook when we met. You, who believed everything I told you because you were so desperate to be loved? The words should have hurt. Maybe later they would. Right now they just felt clarifying. This was who he really was. Not the charming man who had swept her off her feet. Not the devoted husband who had promised to love her forever. This contemptuous, entitled man who saw her as nothing but a means to an end. Goodbye, Preston. Hey, don't you dare hang up. If you think you can just walk away from me. She ended the call. Nora and Richard and Patricia and her mother all stared at her. I needed to hear it, Carrie said quietly. I needed to know who he really was. Not the man I married. Not the mask he wore. The man he actually is underneath. And now? Nora asked. Carrie looked at the documents spread across the table. The evidence of his crimes. The paper trail of his deception. Now we destroy him. The words came out stronger than she expected. Harder. Like a door slamming shut on everything she used to believe about her life. The next 2 weeks were a blur of activity. Depositions, document reviews, strategy sessions that ran late into the night. Meetings with prosecutors and accountants and investigators who asked questions she never thought she would have to answer. Yes, she had trusted him completely. No, she had never questioned where the money went. Yes, she had signed documents without reading them because he told her it was just paperwork. She heard herself describing her marriage, and she didn't recognize the woman in those stories. The woman who had given up her autonomy piece by piece, who had let a predator control every aspect of her life. How had she become that woman? How had she not seen what was happening? But she knew the answer. She had wanted so badly to be loved, had wanted so desperately to believe that she had found her person, her happily ever after. Preston had used that longing against her, had exploited her vulnerability with surgical precision, had given her just enough affection to keep her hooked while slowly, systematically stealing everything she had. Carrie's mother moved into Nora's guest room. The three women formed an unlikely war council, united against the man who had tried to steal everything. Richard Dalton became a constant presence. His calm expertise anchored their efforts. He knew which judges were sympathetic, which prosecutors were aggressive, which reporters would tell the story fairly. Harold Bennett sent updates from the Belmore. The staff had noticed the change in management. Rumors were spreading. Morale was low. They're worried, Harold reported over the phone. Many of them have worked here for decades. They remember your father. They're afraid of what Mr. Whitmore will do to the hotel. Tell them not to worry, Carrie said. Things are about to change. She meant it. For the first time since the eviction, she felt something like purpose. Preston had taken 3 years of her life, her money, her self-worth, her connection to everyone who might have helped her. He would not take her father's legacy. The contractions started at 3 in the morning on a Wednesday. Carrie woke to pain, sharp, rhythmic, like a fist clenching inside her belly. Too early. 6 weeks too early. Nora, her voice came out as a croak. Nora, something's wrong. Within minutes, they were in Nora's car, racing through empty streets toward the hospital. Dorothy sat in the back seat, gripping Carrie's hand so hard it left marks. Breathe, Nora commanded from the driver's seat. Just breathe. You're going to be fine. The baby's going to be fine. But Carrie couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The pain was secondary to the terror that gripped her chest like ice. Not now, please, not now. She's not ready. I'm not ready. The city blurred past the windows, streetlights and storefronts, and the occasional pedestrian staring at the car, speeding through red lights. Carrie pressed her hand against her belly. The baby wasn't moving. Was that bad? Was that a sign that something was wrong? Please be okay. Please, please be okay. I need you to be okay. The hospital was a blur of fluorescent lights and hurried voices and cold hands on her belly. Someone attached monitors. Someone else started an IV. Nurses appeared and disappeared, their faces professional masks that revealed nothing. Dr. Margaret Palmer arrived in scrubs, her gray hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She had been Carrie's obstetrician since the first trimester. Steady, calm, unflappable. Let's see what's going on, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a lighthouse beam. Carrie watched the monitor, the jagged line of the baby's heartbeat, the peaks and valleys that meant something to the doctors but looked like abstract art to her. False labor, doctor. Palmer announced after what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. Your body is under extreme stress, but the baby is fine, heart rate strong, no dilation. Relief crashed over Carrie like a wave. She sagged back against the pillows, tears streaming down her face. You need rest, Dr. Palmer continued. Real rest, not whatever you've been doing. I've been fighting to save my inheritance from my criminal husband. The doctor's expression didn't change. She had probably heard stranger explanations. I understand, but your body doesn't care about legal battles. Your body only knows stress. And right now your stress levels are dangerous. Your blood pressure is elevated. Your cortisol is through the roof. You're not sleeping. You're not eating properly. What am I supposed to do? Just let him win? You're supposed to survive, Dr. Palmer's voice softened, but her eyes remained serious. You're supposed to take care of yourself and your baby. Everything else can wait. Everything else is my life. Your life is that baby. Right now, that's the only thing that matters. The lawyers can fight your battles. The accountants can track your money. But only you can keep your daughter safe. Daughter, Carrie blinked. You said daughter. I did. Dr. Palmer allowed herself a small smile. The ultrasound confirmed it. You're having a girl, a daughter, someone she would have to protect and nurture and teach about a world full of people who saw value and wanted to take it. They kept her overnight for observation. Nora slept in the chair beside her bed, folded into an uncomfortable position, but refusing to leave. Dorothy paced the hallway, making phone calls, managing the chaos that continued outside the hospital walls. Richard called with updates. The district attorney had filed charges. Preston's lawyers were scrambling. The story had leaked to the press. None of it mattered. In that hospital bed, with monitors beeping and her daughter's heartbeat echoing through the room, Carrie finally understood something. She had been so focused on revenge that she had forgotten what she was fighting for. Not money, not property, not justice, her child, her future, the life she wanted to build after all of this was over. Preston had already taken 3 years. She would not let him take one more day. When they discharged her the next morning, she made Nora a promise. No more all-night strategy sessions, no more skipping meals, no more stress. The legal stuff will be handled by lawyers. That's what we're paying them for. Carrie pressed her hand against her belly. The baby was moving again. Strong kicks. Healthy kicks. I almost lost her, Nora, because I was so busy being angry that I forgot to take care of myself. Her? Nora asked. Carrie smiled. The first real smile in weeks. It's a girl. You. Nora's eyes filled with tears. Oh, honey, a girl, a perfect little girl. She's going to need a godmother. She already has one. The next week was different, slower, gentler. Carrie spent mornings in the sun on Nora's tiny balcony watching pigeons and reading books that had nothing to do with real estate law. Afternoons, she napped and talked to her mother about her father and learned stories she had never heard before. Evenings, she watched cooking shows and ate whatever Nora brought home and tried to remember what it felt like to be a person instead of a victim. She read her father's letter again, and again, and again, and again. The bricks and mortar mean nothing. What matters is what you build inside them. What was she building? A lawsuit? A revenge story? A cautionary tale? Or something more? On the 5th day of her enforced rest, Harold Bennett sent flowers, white roses in a crystal vase. The card read, "The staff of the Belmore stand with you, Mrs. Mitchell." Mrs. Mitchell, not Whitmore, her maiden name, her father's name, the name on the deed. She called Harold that afternoon. "I want to come back," she said, "to the hotel. I want to see it, really see it, the way my father saw it." "Of course, Mrs. Mitchell, whenever you're ready." "Tomorrow. I'll be there tomorrow." The Belmore looked different in daylight. Carrie stood on the sidewalk across the street, watching guests come and go through the revolving doors. The building was beautiful. Limestone facade with carved details she had never noticed before. Brass fixtures polished to a mirror shine. The kind of old-world elegance that couldn't be replicated. Her father had built this. Not literally. He hadn't laid the bricks or installed the chandeliers. But he had seen the potential in an abandoned building that everyone else had given up on. He had invested everything he had. He had believed when no one else would, and he had created something beautiful. Harold met her at the service entrance. His eyes were wet. "Welcome home, Miss Mitchell." The words hit her harder than expected. Home. This place she had lived in for 3 years without knowing what it meant. "Show me everything," she said. "I want to see what my father built. All of it." They started in the basement, the parts of the hotel that guests never saw. Industrial kitchens with stainless steel surfaces and the smell of bread baking. Laundry facilities with mountains of white sheets waiting to be folded. The mechanical room where boilers and electrical panels and ventilation systems kept the building alive. Workers paused as she passed. Some recognized her from the viral video. Others knew her only as the woman who had lived in the penthouse. But Harold introduced her differently now. "This is Caroline Mitchell," he said, "Thomas Mitchell's daughter, the owner of the Belmore." The words rippled through the staff. Whispers followed her through corridors and up service elevators. By the time they reached the main floor, it seemed like everyone knew. Thomas Mitchell had been loved here. His daughter was something like a legend returning. "Your father knew every employee by name," Harold said, as they walked through the housekeeping wing. He remembered their birthdays, their children's names. When someone had a family emergency, he would appear with an envelope of cash and tell them to take all the time they needed. "I didn't know that." He didn't want you to know. He thought it would make you uncomfortable, that you would feel pressured to be as generous as he was. A woman in a housekeeping uniform stopped them in the hallway, 50-ish. Graying hair pulled back in a tight bun, eyes that had seen a lot of hard years. Miss Mitchell? Her accent was faintly Caribbean. I'm Marie. I worked here when your father was alive. Hello, Marie. Your father paid for my daughter to go to college. Marie's voice cracked. She's a nurse now, at a hospital in Brooklyn. Saves lives every day. She paused. I've been waiting a long time to thank someone for that, so thank you. Thank your father, and welcome home. Do. She walked away before Carrie could respond. Harold cleared his throat. There are many stories like that. Your father helped a lot of people. Why didn't he tell me? Because that's not why he did it. He helped people because it was right, not because he wanted credit. They continued the tour. The kitchens where chefs prepared meals for hundreds of guests every day. The ballrooms where weddings and galas and corporate events filled the hotel with light and music. The spa where guests came to escape the stress of their lives for a few precious hours. Every department, every corner, every inch of the building her father had saved from demolition 30 years ago. By the time they reached the lobby, Carrie felt like she was seeing it for the first time. Not as Preston's wife, not as a guest in her own life, not as the victim of an elaborate fraud. As the owner. He had plans, Harold said, as they stood in the center of the marble floor. Expansion plans. A second tower connected by a sky bridge. A rooftop garden where guests could escape the city without leaving the building. Show me. They went to Harold's office, the same office where her world had shattered. But this time, Harold pulled blueprints from a filing cabinet she had never noticed before. Her father's handwriting filled the margins. Notes about natural light and guest experience. Ideas for amenities and improvements. A vision for what the Belmore could become. These are beautiful, Carrie whispered. He was a beautiful man, Miss Mitchell, in the ways that matter. She spent hours in that office reading her father's notes, understanding his vision, seeing the hotel through his eyes. By the time she left, something had shifted inside her. She wasn't just fighting to protect her inheritance. She was fighting to honor her father's legacy, to finish what he had started, to prove that his trust in her had been deserved. Richard Dalton called that evening. Preston's lawyers have reached out, he reported. They want to negotiate. Negotiate what? He's offering to walk away quietly. No contest divorce. He keeps the debts he created. You keep the properties. No public trial. And what does he get? A chance to avoid prison. Carrie stood at Nora's window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Preston was probably pacing his office, calculating his odds, planning his next move. He threw me out of my own hotel, she said slowly. He installed his mistress in my penthouse. He let the whole world see it. He recorded my humiliation for posterity. I understand. He didn't give me quiet. He didn't give me dignity. He gave me humiliation. I understand. No deal. We go public. All of it. The press conference was Richard's idea. Not defensive, offensive. Take control of the narrative before Preston could spin his version of events. They chose the lobby of the Belmore. The same lobby where her humiliation had been recorded. The same lobby where she would now tell her story on her own terms. Carrie wore a simple navy dress that accommodated her 8-month belly and her father's watch on her wrist. The glass was scratched. The band was worn from decades of use. It was the most valuable thing she owned. Harold met her at the service entrance, their new tradition. Are you ready, Miss Mitchell? No, she admitted, but I'm doing it anyway. She walked through the back corridors, past the kitchen where staff paused to watch, past the housekeeping stations where women in uniform nodded with quiet solidarity, past Marie, who whispered, "Go get him," as Carrie passed. When she emerged into the lobby, the press was waiting. Cameras, microphones, a wall of faces that blurred together in the bright lights. Richard had set up a podium near the reception desk. Behind it hung a portrait of the Belmore on opening day, her father's vision preserved in oil paint in a gilded frame. Carrie approached the microphone, adjusted it with steady hands she willed not to shake, looked directly into the cameras. My name is Caroline Mitchell. My father, Thomas Mitchell, built this hotel. I own it. And I have some things to say about what has been done in my name. The press conference lasted 45 minutes. Carrie read a prepared statement that Richard had helped her craft. Every word chosen carefully. Every accusation backed by documents that appeared on screens behind her. She detailed the forgeries, the fraud, the systematic isolation from anyone who could have helped her. She named names, showed evidence, answered questions with a calm precision that surprised even her. "Mrs. Mitchell, are you pressing charges?" "The district attorney has already filed charges. This is now a criminal matter." "What do you say to allegations that you were aware of Mr. Whitmore's activities?" "I was not aware. I was deliberately deceived. Every piece of evidence supports that conclusion." "Will you be seeking divorce?" "That process has already begun." "Do you have a message for your husband?" Carrie paused, looked directly into the nearest camera, thought about all the women who might be watching, all the women who had been lied to and manipulated and made to feel small by men who claimed to love them. "My message is for every woman who has ever been deceived by someone she trusted. Trust your instincts, trust the people who knew you before, and know that the truth always comes out eventually." The story exploded. Within hours, Preston's face was on every news channel. His company stock plummeted. His board demanded an emergency meeting. His mother issued a statement claiming deep concern and no prior knowledge. Tiffany Lawson was photographed leaving the penthouse with her own suitcases. The internet made memes. Late-night hosts made jokes. Social media turned Preston Whitmore into a cautionary tale. But Carrie didn't watch any of it. She was in her father's office at the Belmore, going through files Harold had preserved for 20 years. Plans and projections and letters from tenants and partners and the families of employees he had helped. "He would be proud of you," Harold said, bringing her tea. "Would he?" "Without question. You showed courage today. The same kind of courage he showed when he bought this building and everyone said he was crazy. He built things. I'm just trying to protect them." "Building and protecting are the same thing, Miss Mitchell. Both require vision, both require strength, both require the willingness to fight for what matters." The criminal case proceeded faster than anyone expected. Preston's lawyers tried every delay tactic in the book, motion after motion, appeal after appeal, but the evidence was overwhelming. His assistant, tracked down in Costa Rica, agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. She provided emails, text messages, a paper trail of instructions that led directly to Preston's desk. "He told me it was just business," she testified, "that Mrs. Whitmore had agreed to everything, that I was just helping with paperwork." "Did you ever verify that with Mrs. Whitmore directly?" "No. Mr. Whitmore said she found legal matters overwhelming, that she preferred to have him handle everything." The same lies, over and over, the same manipulation of everyone around him. The forensic accountants found more fraud, hidden accounts in the Cayman Islands, shell companies in Delaware and Nevada, a web of deception that stretched back years before Carrie even met him. By the end of the month, the prosecution had enough evidence for a conviction 10 times over. The only question was whether Preston would go to trial or accept a plea deal. He chose to fight. That was his mistake. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Carrie testified on the 4th day. She sat in the witness box and answered questions for 6 hours. The prosecutor walked her through every document, every forged signature, every intercepted letter. The defense attorney tried to suggest she had been complicit, that she had benefited from the fraud, that she couldn't possibly have been as naive as she claimed. "Mrs. Whitmore," the defense attorney said, "you expect this jury to believe that you lived in a hotel you owned for 3 years and never knew?" "I didn't know, because my husband intercepted every communication that would have told me." "You never wondered where the money came from? The penthouse, the jewelry, the lifestyle?" "I believed my husband when he said he was successful. I trusted him." "You trusted him with access to all your finances?" "I trusted him with my life, my future, my heart. The finances seemed like a small thing by comparison." The defense attorney had no response to that. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Guilty on all counts. Preston stood motionless as the verdict was read. His face was gray. His expensive suit hung on him like a costume from a play that had closed. He looked nothing like the charming man who had swept her off her feet 4 years ago. He looked like what he had always been, a predator, a fraud, a man who saw value and wanted to take it. Carrie didn't feel triumphant. She felt empty, tired, ready for this chapter of her life to end. The sentencing came 2 weeks later, 8 years in federal prison. Fraud, forgery, embezzlement, identity theft, 8 years. When their daughter was born, her father would be behind bars. When she took her first steps, said her first words, started kindergarten, he would miss all of it. Carrie didn't attend the sentencing. She was at home, her new home, a brownstone near Nora's place that she had bought with her own money from her own accounts. She was watching her belly move. the baby shifting position, getting ready for the journey that was just weeks away. Tommy, she had started calling her, short for Thomasina, after the man who had taught her what strength really meant. The baby came 3 weeks early. Carrie woke at 4 in the morning to a sensation like a rubber band snapping. Her water had broken. This time it was real. Nora drove. Dorothy sat in the back seat. The same configuration as the false alarm, but everything felt different. Calmer. More certain. This was happening. Ready or not, her daughter was coming. The hospital was quiet at this hour. The overnight staff moved with practiced efficiency, guiding her to a room, hooking up monitors, asking questions she answered on autopilot. Doctor? Margaret Palmer arrived just as the contractions started to intensify. You're doing beautifully, she said. Just breathe. Trust your body. 12 hours of labor. 12 hours of pain that built and crested and receded like waves. 12 hours of Nora holding one hand and Dorothy holding the other. Both of them telling her she was strong. She was brave. She was almost there. At 4:17 the afternoon, Thomasina Rose Mitchell entered the world. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. Dark hair like her mother. Strong lungs that announced her arrival with a furious cry that filled the delivery room. Carrie held her for the first time. Exhausted, elated, overwhelmed by a love so intense it felt like drowning. Hello, sweetheart, she whispered. I've been waiting for you. The baby's eyes opened, dark and unfocused, but somehow knowing, as if she understood exactly who her mother was and why she was crying. Nora was there, tears streaming down her face. Dorothy was there, clutching a camera and forgetting to take pictures. Harold sent flowers that filled half the room. Richard Dalton called with news about the final settlement. The civil case had concluded, all fraudulent debts voided, all stolen assets recovered, Carrie's net worth restored to what it should have been. None of it mattered. What mattered was the tiny person in her arms, the life she would protect with everything she had. What are you going to tell her? Nora asked later, as Carrie nursed for the first time. About her father? Carrie looked at her daughter, those perfect fingers, that impossible face. So small, so new, so completely dependent on her. The truth, she said, when she's old enough to understand, that her father made terrible choices, that he hurt people who trusted him, that some things can't be forgiven, but they can be survived. And about her grandfather? That he was a good man who built beautiful things, that he loved her before she was born, that his legacy lives on in every brick of every building he ever touched. The first weeks home were a blur of sleepless nights and endless feedings. Carrie learned how to change diapers, how to swaddle, how to interpret different cries for different needs, how to function on 2 hours of sleep and still feel like the luckiest woman in the world. Her mother stayed for the first month, then Nora took over. Then Carrie found her own rhythm, slowly, imperfectly. But surely. Harold sent weekly updates from the Belmore. The hotel was recovering, staff morale had improved, guests were returning. They want to meet you, he reported during one call. The long-term employees, the ones who remember your father, they want to thank you for saving this place. I didn't save it. With respect, Miss Mitchell, you did. If Mr. Whitmore had continued much longer, there would have been nothing left to save. He was draining it dry. She went to the hotel on Tommy's 1-month birthday, a brief visit, just long enough to walk through the lobby and shake hands and accept congratulations. The staff treated her like royalty. Not because of her money or her name, because she was Thomas Mitchell's daughter, because she had protected what he built. In the elevator afterward, holding her sleeping daughter, Carrie thought about the last time she had ridden these 42 floors, down then, in shock, in tears, her world collapsing. Up now. Changed, stronger, a mother, a survivor. The penthouse had been converted into something new. Preston's presence scrubbed away. The space now served as a charity suite for families with hospitalized children. A place for parents to rest while their kids fought battles at nearby medical centers. Carrie's idea, her first act as owner. Her father would have approved. 6 months later, she hosted her first board meeting. The conference room at the Belmore, 7 faces around a polished table, 3 women, 4 men, all hand-selected, all brilliant. Harold sat at her right hand, Richard at her left. The expansion project, she announced. My father's plans. I want to make them real. She spread the blueprints across the table. Her father's handwriting in the margins. His vision for a second tower, a rooftop garden, everything the Belmore could become. The initial estimates put the cost at approximately $200 million, Richard noted. I don't care about the return, Carrie said, looking around the table. I care about finishing what my father started, about creating something beautiful that will last. The board approved the project unanimously. Ground would break in the spring. 1 year later, Carrie stood in the newly renovated ballroom of the Belmore Grand. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Fresh flowers covered every surface. 300 guests mingled in evening wear. Champagne glasses catching the light. It was a fundraiser, the first annual gala for the Mitchell Family Foundation, supporting women escaping financial abuse, building paths to independence and dignity, her foundation, her legacy. Tommy was home with a sitter, 14 months old now, walking, running actually, a fearless explorer who had inherited her mother's determination and her grandfather's eye for potential. How do you feel? Nora appeared at her elbow, resplendent in emerald green. Carrie considered the question. How did she feel? 1 year ago, she had been crying in an elevator, humiliated, homeless, pregnant, and alone. Now she stood in a ballroom she owned, surrounded by people who supported her work, building something that mattered. Free, she decided. Not happy in the way I used to define happy, but free. Like I'm finally living in my own story instead of playing a part in someone else's. That's pretty profound for someone running on baby sleep deprivation. Tommy's a good teacher. She knows what she wants and she's not afraid to demand it. Wonder where she gets that. Carrie smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes and didn't require any effort. The gala raised $400,000, more than she had hoped, enough to help dozens of women rebuild their lives. After the last guest left, Carrie climbed to the rooftop. Not the garden yet, that was still under construction, but there was a viewing platform where she could see the city spread out below like a promise. She thought about the woman she had been, the one who couldn't make decisions without checking Preston's approval, the one who apologized for breathing too loudly, the one who had forgotten she had a voice. That woman felt like a stranger now. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. There were still hard days, moments of doubt, old habits that crept back when she was tired or stressed. But she was different, stronger, more herself than she had ever been. She pulled out her phone, opened the Notes app, started typing. A letter for Tommy to read someday when she was old enough to understand. My darling girl, your grandfather left me something more valuable than money or property. He left me proof that quiet people can build empires, that kindness isn't weakness, that the most powerful thing you can own is your own story. Someone will try to take that from you someday. The world is full of people who see potential and want to control it. Don't let them. Trust slowly, love fiercely, and remember, you are the deed holder of your own life, nobody else. All my love, forever, Mom. She saved the letter, closed the app, looked out at the city one more time. Then she went home to her daughter. The Belmore 2 opened 18 months later. Twin towers now, connected by a sky bridge on the 40th floor. A rooftop garden spanning both buildings, the most prestigious address in the city. Carrie cut the ribbon at the opening ceremony. Tommy, now 2.5, clapped her hands and demanded to press the button on the elevator. That's right, sweetheart, Carrie said, guiding her daughter's hand. We're going up. The doors opened. They stepped inside. 42 floors. The same journey she had made hundreds of times now. But every time, she remembered where she had started and how far she had come. The numbers ascending on the polished brass panel. 1, she had been broken once. 10, betrayed by the person she trusted most. 20, made to feel small and worthless and dependent. 30, but she had survived. 40, rebuilt. 42, become someone her father would recognize, someone her daughter could be proud of. The doors opened onto the rooftop garden, roses blooming, a fountain splashing. The city spread out below like a kingdom she had built with her own hands. Tommy ran toward the flowers, laughing. Carrie followed, smiling. This was what her father had meant. The bricks and mortar mean nothing. What matters is what you build inside them. She had built a life, a legacy, a future for her daughter and for all the daughters who would come after. She had built herself, and she was magnificent. 5 years later, Carrie stood at the window of her corner office, watching the sunset over the skyline she had helped shape. The Mitchell Hotel Group now owned 15 properties across the country. The foundation had helped over 5,000 women rebuild their lives. Tommy was in second grade, already showing her grandfather's talent for seeing potential in unlikely places. Preston had served his 8 years, released early for good behavior. He had tried to contact Carrie once, through lawyers. She had declined to respond. There was nothing left to say. Tonight was the anniversary gala, the 7th annual, bigger every year. But before she went downstairs, she had one more thing to do. She pulled an envelope from her desk drawer, cream-colored, heavy stock, her own handwriting on the front. For my Tommy? 30 pages, the complete story, not the sanitized version she had told her daughter so far. The whole truth, the betrayal, the discovery, the fight, the victory, and the lessons. Trust slowly, love fiercely. Remember that the most powerful thing you can own is your own story. Tommy would read this letter on her 18th birthday. On her 30th, she would learn about her inheritance, the same timeline her grandfather had chosen. Some legacies are better discovered than given. Carrie sealed the envelope, locked it in the same drawer where her father's letter still lived, worn from handling, precious beyond measure. Then she checked her reflection in the window, smoothed her dress, took a breath. Time to go build something. She crossed the office, opened the door. On the wall beside it hung a framed photograph. Opening day of the Belmore 2. A woman and her young daughter standing where two men had once stood. Different names on the deed now, but the same legacy. Building things that matter, protecting what you love, trusting slowly and loving fiercely, and never, ever letting anyone take what belongs to you. Carrie smiled at the photograph as she passed. Thanks, Dad, for everything. Then she walked toward the elevator, toward the gala, toward the life she had built from the rubble of the one that had been stolen. Going up, always up. And that is the story of how one woman turned her darkest moment into her greatest victory. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment below. Tell me, what would you have done in Caroline's shoes? Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications, because stories like this, they are just getting started. See you in the next one.